Hello everyone. Welcome to what is hopefully the first of a series of YouTube videos on coding. Uh, Many people might know me from making my Minecraft plugins or the Discord server I run, which is evidently because of the Minecraft plugins. But I want to start here and start making some YouTube videos for everyone. Trying to teach people how to learn to code. And this is going to be what I hope to be the start of a series, but I'm going to start this series by learning JavaScript. Many people have been asking me to do Java in terms of Minecraft plugins, and I hope to get to those soon, but I want to just start here with JavaScript, as I feel it is a good starting language, a good basis, and it just kind of gets you into the coding world without fully trying to understand all the small little things that might confuse everyone. To start this, we gotta install code to actually write, or a program, sorry, to actually write our code. To do this, we're going to be using this website, which is made by a project made by Microsoft. It's just a nice code editor. My personal favorite, to be honest with you. It's just super sleek. It's nice, gets the job done. But yeah, I'll put this link in the description. But basically, you want to just go here and download it for whatever version your computer is running on. If you can't run a program like this on your computer, there's other options like websites such as Replit or Glitch that also allow you to code online. And I would like to make a short video about those sooner or in the future. But for now, I'm just going to be using this, and I'll just be showing how to use this just because this is a basic starting point. So the first thing we need to do is actually download our software here. And once you get this installed, you should be presented with a place to start, such as this. You might start on a new window like this, because I don't expect you to already have a file created. But once you're on here, and I get some pop-ups here because I'm not signed in, but once you're here, you should be able to make a new file. You can also hit Control-N, which is what I'm going to do, and it'll make a new file just right here, just basic, just blank. And you can go ahead and click this text here, which says select language, and you can find JavaScript. It might be say bubble JavaScript or something else. If it doesn't show up there, you can probably just ignore it for now. But I'm just going to click JavaScript, as that is the type of file that I'm going after here. Now, first thing I'm going to do is also save this file to my computer. So I'm going to hit Control-S. You can also go to File and go down to Save. And it's going to ask me to save it somewhere. I'm going to go to Desktop, Tutorial, where I'm going to put this file. And I'm just going to call this intro video, I guess, .js. Okay, hit save. You got a file here. To be able to run that back, that's all right. Might take you a little bit. I kind of just jumped right into that, but the result is you should have a file open in this program that is a .js file or a .javascript file, which is just a shortened version of that. And you can name it whatever you want. It doesn't have to be intro video. It could be my first JS file. It could be JS. It could be main. It could be start. It could be intro. Whatever you want. Up to you. But in this, we're basically going to go over the kind of the basics for programming. Sorry, kind of just basics for this language as well. And the first thing we're going to do is talk about how to output code to the console. Now, for programming, outputting stuff to the console is basically telling the computer to say something to itself almost. It's kind of hard to see, but down here there's like a little drawer, and this drawer will have our terminal down here. And it doesn't really have anything yet, so I'm not going to have much. Don't worry about that. But the first thing we want to do is actually write something to our terminal. And this is what's called the console. It's just the console. It's just where a code is being ran. It's kind of just the output for it. So to reference this in JavaScript, all you have to do is write the word console. And then to print something to the console, you say console.log. Now, this saying dot is basically we're accessing a child of console. So I think of console as it's like a locker or like a storage container, right? And by saying dot something, you're asking to go inside there and find something with the name log. Log. So you're basically finding a thing that's called log inside of console. And in this case, log is actually a function or something that can be ran. To run something, you have to put parentheses at the end. Basically tells it to execute whatever this function is, log, inside of the object console. But the function of log also includes a parameter. Now, a parameter is something you put into the function to actually give it a value to use. In this case, we're asking it to output something to the console. If we wanted to, for say, output the word hello to the console, we would have to write hello. But to write the word hello, we need to use quotations. Now we use quotations and then we write hello. Doesn't matter the capitals. You can say hello in all lowercase, all uppercase. You can do an alternating case. Doesn't matter to me. Whatever. Whatever for you, you can put whatever you want in these quotes. You can put hello world, which is a common thing programmers do. Or you could say hello, my name is whatever. But whatever it is, you make sure it's inside of these quotations and that it's inside of the parentheses right after the word console.log. Now, once we have this, if we were to save the file and hit F5 on the keyboard, or go to run and hit start debugging and hit node.js, you would get an output down here that says hello, my name is. Again, if you need me to go through that again, it's run, start debugging, and it will run this. It might ask you to pick from the list of which one you want to debug with. Node.js, Node.js is the one you want to select. If for some reason it says something else, you might need to install it, but it should be alright. There's also this Java debug terminal, and if you go in here, you should be able to run the file with node intro video.js. But that is if you have, it's because I'm in the wrong file, never mind. If you're in this folder in your console, you can do that, but because I'm not in that folder, it's not going to work, so I would just hit run and debug. Just this is the fast way to, oh, hello? Oh, I don't have the console open. If you have the console open, that'll work. If you hit run and debug. I don't actually know the keybind to open the console. I should probably figure that out, seeing as it's quite useful. But I believe it's just terminal, new terminal, and it pops up in the debug console. Oh, yeah. Control-Shift-Y is how you open that, if anyone was wondering. I totally forgot because I usually just drag it open. But that's how you open it up. So again, run, not what I wanted to do. Run, start debugging, it'll run your file. Cool. Simple like that. And this basically just prints whatever text you have in here to the console. We could change this up and say hello, just without the my name is, and it'll say hello. Great. That's nice. No, it's kind of just simple. And now, just for some, like, put some definitions to this, anything that's inside of a string, or, oh my god, anything that's inside of a text, like quotations, is called a string. Alright, and that's basically just any text. That's any letters, words, like anything you want to say that is like literal. Like you're saying that this is exactly this text right here. That is a string. There's other things like numbers, right? You know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. That's all a number. That's different. If you can leave those out without being inside of a string, and they could be done, like they can have like math operators done on them. You can have like plus and minus, division, multiplication, exponents, stuff like that. And to do that, we can do the same thing. We can say console.log and say pick your favorite number, 2, 22, 244. You can do a whole bunch of random numbers. Doesn't matter. Any numbers works there. Do whatever you want. And then if you run it again, boom, numbers again. And notice how it also printed this first line because that was still in the code. So you'll notice it says hello and then all of the numbers we picked. Cool. So I'll change this again. I'll just do 2 zeros because, you know, why not? And you see when I print that, it says 1 0 because it'll automatically simplify any numbers that, you know, don't necessarily need to be like they are. For example, any leading zero like this, it doesn't matter. It's still 0. The number is still 0, so it doesn't matter. If I were to put a 1 here, though, it would keep it as whatever number it is. And that's just some simple simplifications it does if you needed to know that. But if we wanted to actually print 2 zeros instead, we have to put them in quotes. Because now notice when I do this, it has 2 zeros instead of just 1. That's some of the different cases that you might want to look out for, depending on if you want to use a string or a number. Okay, just in case you were wondering, this is something that people look out for. Just make sure that you're not missing something that you're supposed to be including. But yeah, so to write this down, any numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, on and on and on. These are all numbers. There's also different types of numbers, just based on what type of number you're using, such as a decimal, so 0.2. That is what's called a float. See, it prints 0.2. And those are still numbers. They're still numbers. People like to call them floats just because in other languages they have different classes, whereas any whole numbers are called integers. But to be honest with you, in JavaScript, it does not matter. You can have a 1, you can have a 1.2, 1.5, 1.6, 21.3, 28.9. Doesn't matter. They're all still numbers in its mind. It doesn't try to like classify them differently, but they're all numbers. Next, there's a big topic in any programming language are variables. Think of variables as kind of like that storage container we talked about earlier. Console is technically a variable. Variables are just places to store information. They're things that, hold numbers, letters, true or false statements. They can hold functions, whatever it wants. It's something that just holds information. It stores it almost. In JavaScript, there are 3 different ways to create variables. The first one being where you write var, which is short for variable, and then whatever you want the variable to be named, such as name, and then set it equal to whatever you want it to be equal to, as in your name. This creates a variable called name that is equal to the text name. And notice how this is in quotations because we want it to be the literal text name. If I were just to write name, there would be an error because name, it's trying to find an object called name, but that doesn't exist in this context. So you have to write it in quotations. But now, name, the variable, which is lowercase name, it could be uppercase if you wanted it to be, but whatever, can be used without putting it in quotes. So for example, if I said console.log name, notice how I did not put any quotes in there. When I hit F5, it will print name because I just put it as the value up here. So easy, does that. Now if I replace this with like some text that says, hello there, welcome to my project, right? That's some text I just put right there. Let's go and let's run this really fast. And boom, it says, hello there, welcome to my project. So this can be set to any value and it will be printed right here. All right, perfect. Now you could also, since we're just using this variable here, you could also type hello there, welcome to my project right there, which is why it's giving me this little slash through this. But we're testing out with variables, so just go with this process. So next we can do the same thing with numbers, right? Var number equals, I don't know, pick number 7, for example. Wow. Now we can say console.log 7. And now we have the number 7, oh, not number 7, number, my bad, printed here, and this value of number is 7, so it will print 7 right here. Boom, 7. So now we can, say, take the value of variables and print them out to the console, and they can be stored and then printed again, and then they can be changed and then printed again. So how do we change variables? Well, like I said, there are 3 different types of ways to make variables. Now, there's another type that's called let, which is the same thing roughly as var. For example, let name2 equal Joe, for example, and let's let number2 equal 99, right? If I wanted to go down here, I could say name is equal to name2. And now here's the thing. Name does not have to have var in front of it. I mean, I could put var here. I mean, it'd be kind of redundant seeing as I've already made a variable called var. But because I've used the var operator here, I can set the variable name to something else at any time. For example, name2. Or let's say I wanted it to be just some random number. That also works. Same thing with let. If I said name2 equals something else like numbers, not an I, a numbers, that works. And also notice how I'm changing it from a string, which this one is, to a number. That works fine. I could also make this a string. It would work fine. I can make this a string and say Joseph, because why not? But that's how that works. You can set value, so you can reset the variable to a different value whenever you want it to be. Same thing with numbers. Like for example, number 2. I set this to some number there. Number 1 or number set to any number like that. Whatever works, right? It's all good. But there's another type of variable called const. Const is short for constant, or a variable that does not change. For example, const, let's just call this number but capitalized, just because to make it more identifiable, equals 0. Right? If I tried going down here and saying number equals 0, well, first I'd get an error because it thinks it's an object, but at the same time, it would say assignment to constant variable is not allowed. You can't do that. A const variable cannot be changed. You cannot set the variable of a const variable to something else. But you can set a non-const variable to that variable. So if I want a different example, say number, as in the or the var at the top, equals the const number. And then I already go down here and say print number. What did I do? What did I do? I meant console.log. Oh my god. Console.log number, it would print the value of number. Now, I could also just apply this to the const variable. That's something against that. I can print a constant value all I want. But notice how I cannot set a constant to a different value unless it's the initialization of the variable up here. So if I change that number, it changes it down here. But I can't set number, this one, to something else. So that's what's called a constant variable. So I'll write this down here. Var and let can be variable assignment changed at any time. Const is variable assignment, can't be changed. So the const means it's gonna stay that value forever. Cannot change that value, you cannot edit that value, it's gonna be that. You can't set it to something else. Okay, you can't touch it basically. It's kind of like it's just gonna be like that. You can't touch it. So what do we do with all this information? What do we do with variables? Like, what are they useful for? Well, they're useful for keeping information, obviously, putting together pieces of information, or asking for information. So if you wanted to go through this and basically ask someone for their name and then print their name in a string, we can do that. So first, let's actually ask their name. So I'll say var input name equals somebody's name. I'll pick Joe again, but we have this name, and now we want to say, oh, welcome to our program, right? So I say console.log, which is to put something into the console, and I'm going to say welcome to my program, and then I'm going to say input name. Now I want you to notice it just says input name. Where's Joe? Well, we want Joe, right? Well, to be able to do this, we have to add Joe to our string. So right here we can say plus input name, and now when we print this, it says welcome to my program, Joe. So to add a variable to a string, you have to do it outside the parentheses and say plus and then whatever your variable is. Now this also works with strings. You can just put a string here and say plus Joe in string, but since we want to practice our variables, we can just put this right here. We can also add to the end of the variable. It doesn't matter if you have a space here or not. I'm just going to do it, just make it more obvious. You can also add to the end of this, add an exclamation mark, because we want to make them seem really welcome, right? It's like, welcome to our program, Joe. Boom, right there. So we've added, we've compiled an entire string based on a variable that we got put in. Now we can change this to like any value. We can set it to like 1, Joe 1, Joe 1, because that's my favorite Joe. Whatever, right? It says Joe 1, kind of looks like Joel. But then, we can change this value and it will update whatever is put right here. Perfect. So now we can also do the same thing with numbers, right? Say var favorite number equals 222. And we say console.log my favorite number is favorite number. Boom. I run this, and look, it says my favorite number is 222. Wow. All right. What happens if I change it to 2,600? What happens then? Oh, boom, 2,600. So basically, are able to put in values and print them out based on whatever the value is by combining them to other strings. That's pretty useful. We can also do, math on equations. So for example, if we said, I don't know, var, what is it? Max value, and we'll say it's 999, and then var in value, I guess, and we'll say there's 50, right? And we basically can just say console.log max minus in value. I don't know, just to do some basic math. It doesn't necessarily have to be something super specific, but you can do whatever you want. You can change these numbers up. You can make them negative or positive, or have them be really large or really small. But we can do these values for subtraction, and if it's a number, you can subtract a number and it'll become one other number. Now, for example, if these were strings, it wouldn't work. You couldn't subtract that from that. It wouldn't do anything. But if we said add, and we print this again, see it goes up to 1049. But now if this is a string, and I print this again, look how they combine like this. Instead of saying 1049, it says 99950. That's not very good. So you gotta make sure that when you're trying to do math, you're doing it with a number and not a string. It's a big thing to make sure you look out for. Now, the last thing for variables I want to talk about is something called a Boolean. Now, a Boolean is something that is either true or something that is false. And these are their own type of values, so they're not numbers, they're not strings, but they're a true or false value, which will allow the computer to tell if something is what it is. And this is really useful for conditions, which I'll get to in a minute, and for looping stuff, or trying to sort through values, or trying to compare two values. So it's very important to be able to tell, which values are which. Now, just printing this will just say true or false, so it's kind of useless to print that. But for example, we can check if some values are the same. So the next part of this program I'm going to do is I'm going to be talking about conditions. Okay, conditions are things that are being asked if they're true or false, if something is the same as something, if something is larger than something, smaller than something, whatever it might be. So an example of this is we have to do an if statement. So to say this, we have to basically just type the word if, and then a parenthesis, and then whatever we want to type. For example, in this case, we're going to say 100 is larger than 90. Then, after that, we have to do a curly bracket. These are located on the right side of your keyboard next to the P letter and in between the backslash. You have to hit shift and click them and make sure they're the curly ones, not the square ones. These are the square ones, make sure that it's the curly ones, alright? But basically, any code that you write inside of these brackets, it doesn't matter if you're indent or not, it looks nice to indent though, so I would recommend doing it. But any code you write inside of these brackets will run if 100 is greater than 90. And now, is 100 greater than 90? I think so. So my point is, I'm pretty sure this code will always run. So what we're going to say in here is console.log 100 is greater than 90. Again, remember, if you're typing a text, you want to put it in a string and not just a number. So we run this. The very bottom of our code says 100 is greater than 90. Now, for example, if we said over here 90 is greater than 100, which I don't think is true, and we replace this just to see, just to double check, is 90 greater than 100? I don't think so, but let's see what the computer says. Oh, it didn't say anything. Therefore, it's not greater than 100. But how do we know that it actually ran that part? How do we check? Okay, maybe if 90 isn't greater than 100, well then what else do we want to do? Well, that's where else comes in. An else statement, it goes on the back of an if statement right after the curly bracket, and this will run if this is not true. So if this returns false, as in 90 is less than 100, then whatever is in here will run. So in here we can say console.log 90 is not greater than 100. Hit run. What does it say? 90 is not greater than 100. Boom. This is an if statement. That's a pretty simple if statement as well. I mean, it's just kind of going through and saying, is something greater or than another number? I don't know. Is it? Maybe. Maybe it is. Ask the computer. See what they say. Now, we could also check if two values are the same. So I'm going to set up here. I'm going to say number, or I'll say nm equals 2. And I'm going to say var nn2, just make my variable names. Again, your variable names can be whatever. Just make sure you use the same names. So if you use nm, make sure in my code that I write, use nm. But if you use something else, make sure to use the same thing. I'm just going to use this. For now, I'll change this to n, and I'll change this to m, just to make it a little bit more simple. But down here, basically, we're going to say if n is equal to m. And then in here, we're going to say console.log yes. And then in our else statement, we're going to say console.log no. So basically, if n2 is the same value as m3, it'll say yes. But if they're not the same value, it will say no. It said no. Okay, it means that 2 and 3 are not the same value. If I set it to 2 though, and hit run, it says yes. Okay, so we know it's working. We know that these two values are the same, and we know that they are actually being compared correctly. We can also do something called greater than or equal. So if n is greater than or equal to m, it'll run yes. But if it is not greater than or equal to m, it will run no. And it just says yes again. So now if we set n to a value higher than m, it should still report yes. Cool. Now we set a value of it. We set its value lower, and run it again. It will say no. So that's just a way to like check. You can also do the same thing with less than. So if you wanted to put less than in here, then it would run yes because n1 is less than m2. You can also again do this without the equal sign if you wanted to compare a value that is lower but not equal to. That's the difference between these two. If these two are both the same value, it'll still run yes. But if they're not the same value, it will not run yes. It will only run yes in this case if n is lower the value of m. Cool. Now again, you can also do like subtraction here. So we said if n minus 1 is less than or equal to m, run that. So for example, if we put 3 in here and we ran this, it would say yes because 3 minus 1, which is 2, is less than or equal to m. You do a little bit of math in there. I'll make it all nice and fun. There's trickery. So then, remember, this is a true or false value that is being put out here, and if it is true, it'll run the first one, and if it's false, it'll run the second one. You can also stack conditions, so you can say if true, which will always run true because that true is true, and then we can have something in here, but you can also say if true and have something in here. Now this is especially useful if you have two different values you want to check. So, example, if n is equal to 3, and if m is equal to 2, then you would run these values, and it would run each if statement one after the other. So it doesn't mean that these are like this means that this one up here would run if n is always 3. So if n is 3, it'll run this right here, and if m is 2, it'll run this here, but not if they're both true. If you wanted to check if they're both true, you have to do something like this. If n is equal to 3 and m is equal to 2. This double and sign in the middle basically says that both of these conditions, both the n being equal to 3 and the m being equal to 2, have to be true for this to run. Okay? Now, there's another version of this called the OR operator. So if n is equal to 3 or m is equal to 2, then we're going to do something right here. Okay, a little confusing, but I'll write this here. So this is if statement 1, and then this is if statement 2. This is an AND, or if statement, oh my god, I can't type, statement with and this is an if statement with an OR, yeah. So that basically checks if this is true or this is true. So if either one of these is true, then it'll run here. But if both are false, it'll not run. And this one checks that this one is true and this one is true. Kind of just, double checking in a way. So the next big thing I want to talk about, we've already talked about quite a lot of things, so I'll probably only talk about a few more. But the next big thing I want to talk about is a for loop. A for loop. Well, a for loop in concept is basically just something that will run over and over X amount of times. It'll run, 10 times, 9 times, 8 times, or however long it needs to run until it finishes running, and then you have some values. The most basic type of for loop is a for I in loop, which to construct it, you basically just write the word for, and then you're basically going to have 3 things here. So like I said, I'm just writing this as a template for now. But you're going to have 3 things here, each separated by a semicolon. It's a little funky. But basically, it's going to be, the first one is going to be the initial parameters. The second one is going to be the, the check, in a way, the check. And then the last one is going to be the, final limit, in a way, the final action, I should say. Final action. What this means is this first one right here, you're going to have a variable, such as var I equals, that is going to be the initial number that you're incrementing by. The second one is going to be checking what the value of this is, as in it's less than 10. So basically you're saying each time this runs, if I is less than 10, continue to run it. But if it's more than 10, stop running it. Okay? And this last one is going to be adding to I. Now, I haven't talked about this operator yet, but plus plus is just a simple way of saying plus 1. It does the exact same thing as plus 1, it's without the 1. That's all. Plus plus, exact same thing as plus 1. But if you just said plus 1 here, it wouldn't do anything. You have to say plus equals 1, which is the simpler version of saying I equals I plus 1. So, if you didn't want to have to write all that out, you can just write plus plus. Easy. So, let me go back through this one more time. Var I equals 0 is the starting action. We're basically saying that at the start of this function, we have a variable called I that is going to be set to 0. Each time it runs, we're going to be checking if I is less than 10. If I is less than 10, we're going to add 1 to I at the end of the function that runs in the middle of these brackets. So in here, if we were to write console.log I and run this program, we would basically just get a whole bunch of numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, note that it does not go up to 10 because we're asking if it's less than 10, not less than equals, and we're starting at 0. Which means it'll print 10 numbers, but it will go from 0 to 9. Which, give me a second, is useful in programming because indexes, as in the amount, like if you have a list of stuff, the very first one is the 0, not 1, it's 0. So that gets a little tricky, but if we wanted to get like the number inside of a string, this number is the 0th number, and then the second one is the first number, and the third one is the second number. It's confusing, but that it's indexed like that to provide better usage for computers. That's just how it is. But this does come at a use in programming. So if we, for example, had a name or a word here like bird, but we want to make sure it has 10 letters. So say bird, or no, I lied. We don't have to make sure it has 10 letters. Word is a variable, and any variable can be, or the length of any variable can be retrieved by saying word.length. So the name of the variable .length. It's a property in any string or list or value that is in some sort of container that has a set length. For example, the word bird has 4 letters in it, right? So its length is 4. So if we didn't want to say 10 here, we can say 4, and the word.length is equal to 4. So then for each I, it's going to go 0, 1, 2, 3. That's 4 total, and we can basically get the letter at that in the word bird. So for example, if we were to type console.log word I, now notice I put these brackets here. When we want to get a value from a list, for example, we have the variable word. This is basically equal to a string of B plus a string of I plus a string of R plus a string of D. Right? That's how this is like constructed. The word bird, right? So it's kind of like a list of B, I, R, D. Now we use the square brackets, not the curly ones, the square ones this time, to denote a list. And in lists, you basically have the indexes, like I just went over, of 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. That's how you index stuff, right? So if word is basically just a list of bird, basically by saying word 0, you're asking for the 0, right, which is this one right here. So you're asking for this value, and that's B. So this will produce B. And then word 1 will produce I. And on and on and on until you have the rest of the words, or the rest of the letters. So by saying word I, we're saying at the I letter in word, which is numbers from 0 to 3 at this point, we're going to ask for that letter. So by writing this piece of code right here, when we run it, it will say B-I-R-D. Boom. That might be a little confusing. That was kind of a big jump from the rest of the code we just wrote, and it obviously kind of ramped up a little bit. But I'm going to also add this snippet of code to, I don't know, probably Discord, so that people who want to look at it and want to study a little more, or maybe miss something that they don't understand why it's not working on their end, you can obviously go back and look at it. I'll also, just go back over it if anyone asks me to. But this is kind of just some basic programming for JavaScript. And the future that I want to do, or my plan for the future, which I'll write down here, is go over some more stuff. So I'm going to write one more thing here. This kind of style thing is called a comment. I have been writing them all over the code. You might have noticed. I didn't really explain them, but what it is it's anything that you can write down that will not be executed in the code. It won't be ran. So anything that has the / before it is a comment. It's just for me to read. The computer does not interpret it. Doing it like this slash with the asterisk will make it so I can have a multi-line comment, so all of this stuff in here will not be read by the computer. Basically what I want to do is I want to build a Discord bot, which I do, and I know how to write, so I will be going through that. It's a little more difficult for this though, so we'll have to kind of like mosey our way to it and kind of figure out how we can get to it. But for now, basics of JavaScript, and then we might start building on top of that getting into more stuff about what JavaScript is, what Node.js is, which I touched on a little bit earlier, and building some cool stuff with it, like Discord bots, like some websites maybe, some like servers. So we'll see what we can build, we'll see what we can make, but if anyone has any recommendations, you're free to join the Discord. I'll leave the link in the description, but hang out a little bit, learn about some code, suggest some projects to me, suggest some video ideas. We'll see what happens. We might be able to make some cool stuff, and we might be able to learn a lot. So if you're ever interested, stop by. I'll be happy to have you.